Good evening, everybody. It's Lorraine Alternative Homesteading on Friday, February 28, 2025, and I'm going to continue on part 2 of the affidavit testimony of Robert Earle Wood. So I'm viewing it here. It's actually, this part of it is 19 pages long. I'm not sure how long I'll get through it. It depends on the type here. I might be able to get through it. I'm not sure. So here we go. Please remember to hit the thumbs up. It helps the channel grow, get the message out there. I was tagged on somebody else's video who says that that either my video or something on my channel is being censored. I don't know what it is. Nobody else has mentioned anything. So if you hear of anything or a video or whatever that you're not able to read or view, please let me know. So here we go. This is the affidavit of Robert Earle Wood. State of Minnesota, County of St. Louis, on this 29th day of May 2019, Robert Earle Wood appeared before me, an individual known, excuse me, personally to me, the person that affixed his signature to this document below, and being first duly sworn on this oath, hereby deposes and says, I, Robert Wood, am over the age of 18 and fully competent in every way to make this affidavit. I have personal knowledge of and experience with the facts stated in this document, and if called as a witness, could and would testify completely thereto. Number 1. My name is Robert Earle Wood, also known as Bob. I come from a well-educated family, and I grew up primarily in the upper middle-class neighborhoods around New York City. My father worked in New York City. I studied music, both publicly and privately growing up, and worked as a musician professionally for about 10 years. I traveled throughout North America during this time. I have attended 2 community colleges and a computer training school. I have worked extensively in the building trades and was a self-employed contractor. I'm an excellent researcher and have done extensive research in the fields of religion and philosophy, among other topics of interest. I have managed my parents' estates and affairs through their deaths and kept my mother out of an institution for 6 years before her death. I have also walked up countless mountains in New England, the Rocky Mountains from Colorado to Western Canada, and the Pacific Northwest. I have gone into the wilderness areas. I have done various community public service work. I meditate and do spiritual work. Number 2, no one in my family has a criminal record that I know of. Number 3, I have no criminal record. 4, I'm not a terrorist. 5, this affidavit is basically a synopsis, not complete, of my experience of being a targeted individual in the United States of America for the last 18.5 years. Now, mind you, this is back in 2019, and then he updated it around 2020. And we're up to 2025. It is basically chronological, though the chronology is not perfect. Number 6. In the year 2000, I made an arrangement with my parents to help them in their old age, an arrangement that was beneficial to both parties. I received a small sum of money plus room and board in exchange for my many services. This was a big comfort for my parents in their old age and allowed me to get into the mountains and pursue my study and research. The family home was in Fairfield, Connecticut. 7. Around the same time, I applied for some free counseling, quote-unquote, at the place called Fairfield Community Services in Fairfield, Connecticut. The purpose of this counseling was to get help and advice in the management of my parents and their affairs in their old age. I received the counseling that I requested, but much more as well, as this quote-unquote counseling was used to gain much information about me and build the psychological profile used to attack me later on. I believe my counseling sessions were recorded without my knowledge. The supervisor of counselors, there was a professor of nursing and APRN, ED, CS by the name of Dr. Doris Troth Lipman. Dr. Lipman was a captain in the Army and has an extensive military background. I believe this woman had a lot to do with my targeting. I now personally view her as an evil, criminal psychopath. 8. The targeting begins in the fall of 2001. Just after the events of 9/11 2001, I started noticing some quote-unquote odd occurrences happening to and around me. I was being checked out at trailhead parking lots by the police, mostly Connecticut state troopers. I then started noticing objects being left and placed inside the cab of the pickup truck I was driving, which had been locked at the time. Also, objects kept being left around the truck. I thought this was odd, and I remember feeling some fear and feelings of violation, but I didn't think too much more of it at the time. 9. The first time I remember this happening was at Trailhead parking lot at St. John's Ledges along the Housatonic River in Kent, Connecticut. This happened many times at that location and other locations. 10. I started noticing these same objects, pieces of paper, some with writing on them, wrappers, cans, bottles, cups, garbage, other things, etc., being left everywhere I went. I was starting to become concerned. Something was going on. There was usually the same objects, so it seemed obvious they were being left there for me. 11. The next major event I remember was I had some items stolen out of the room I was sleeping in the family residence. Also, my personal possessions showed up of having been gone through by someone. My books, personal papers, journals, they had pages folded and were marked in various places, and in some cases were missing. Other items were moved around. Things from my wallet, keys disappeared. Also, the objects were appearing inside the residence now. I talked to my parents as they were the ones I was living with at the time, and they knew nothing about it. 12. At this point, I was really concerned. Something was happening, but I had no idea what was going on. 13. Things continued to escalate as these events and more were happening multiple times a day. There was nowhere I could go, nothing I could do without something happening. I was becoming very negatively impacted all the way around, mentally, emotionally, psychically, spiritually, and physically. I was becoming physically sick at times. No one I talked to knew anything about it or could offer any explanation. 14. One day, as I was driving back from Massachusetts to Fairfield on Route 8 in Connecticut around Waterbury, a Connecticut State Police trooper car pulled directly in front of me and drove very slowly. I had to slow down. Again, he was directly in front of me and close. When I looked at his license plate, it read REW-149. My initials and house number! I was shocked and horrified. A wave of fear and terror shot through my spine. This happened at least once more times on the same road about a week later. 15. As the targeting progressed, many vehicles around, including Crown Victorias, would pull up in front of me and drive very slowly. It was obvious these people were trying to give me messages via the license plates. This, combined with everything else that was happening, terrified me. I tried not to look at the plates. 16. Over time, I was able to discern the number system as 1 equals A, 2 equals B, C, 3 equals C, 4 equals D, 5 equals E, etc. down the line. 17. I had vehicles try to run me off the road many times. I had vehicles surround me, box me in while I was driving. I had vehicles start to pull out in front of me, only to pull back at the last minute. I would have to react. I had vehicles drive towards me on the wrong side of the road at night with their lights off. I had vehicles drive towards me on the wrong side of the one-way streets. Many more incidents. These events were happening on a daily basis. More events like this than I'm capable of remembering. Very stressful. 18. Everything I did inside the residence I lived in, my family home, was subject to quote-unquote feedback. I obviously had no privacy. I went to great lengths to try and secure the residence, but was unsuccessful. Every time I left the residence, someone, quote-unquote, would enter it and move, mark, break, or steal things and leave me threatening messages. My life has been threatened more times than I can count. I was living in essence, an electronic concentration camp. No privacy and not secure. 19. The ways in which messages were left were many and various. For example, cans, packages, containers arranged or ripped, torn in ways that expose letters to produce words. Pieces of garbage, wrappers, can bottles, etc., with numbers and letters exposed to create words or messages. Sometimes words were even written down on something with pen or pencil, graffiti, and of course the license plates. Other methods as well. 20. I did not know at the time, but I was being sensitized, Pavlovian, to a number, a letter system, and harassment protocol, for lack of a better term. This system was in conjunction to the license plates and other tactics used by my perpetrators, terrorists. 21. My vehicles were entered and items, parts moved, marked, broken, stolen, just like the residence. The vehicles were vandalized, parts stolen, scratched, and more. If I went to a store to buy something, it would be gone from the shelf. I was living in a state of terror. I was being terrorized. Some, but not all, the tactics being used against me are 24/7 surveillance, including my vehicles, constant feedback from that surveillance to let me know that I'm being watched and to cause psychological damage, followed, watched, harassed, or assaulted everywhere I go, residential and vehicle break-ins and home vehicle invasions, phones tapped and hacked, all communications monitored, mail tampering, computer hacked, harassing phone calls, vehicle tampering and vandalism, including but not limited to water removed from the radiator, gas removed from the gas tank, spikes or nails, etc., put in tires, scratches, hub caps removed, stolen, directed conversation, which is a type of feedback where strangers that should know nothing about the target, me, meaning him, talk about the target's personal business and affairs around them in public places like gas stations, stores, and anywhere else. Information gained through the surveillance. This is a fairly standard OSGS, organized stalking, gang-stalking tactic, and it happens to many targets. This is a very psychologically damaging. License plates, a fairly common tactic described above and used on many targets. Street theater, also described above, is another standard tactic that involves setting up or staging various situations or skits that appear normal but are artificially created and staged by the perpetrators. Some examples are potential car accidents, vehicles coming at me in the wrong direction with their lights off at night, vehicles trying to run me off the road, various stage situations where I had to take a quick action to avoid a crash. I've had vehicles try to run me over while walking, and I've actually been hit by vehicles, and in one case I rolled off the vehicle. I have not been seriously injured out of these contacts with other vehicles, as the vehicles were moving fairly slowly. Mobbing, more, etc. Street theater is not only confined to driving situations, it can happen anytime in any place. There is really no limit to the possibilities and lengths the perpetrators will go through as part of these operations. PSYOP tactics, psychological warfare operation tactics. Also discussed above again, but there's no limit to the possibilities. Many of the above tactics mentioned previously and others fall into this category. It's beyond my capabilities to remember all the PSYOP tactics that have been used against me in the past 18.5 years of being a target. Constant psychological attacks on a daily basis. Again, as mentioned above, family members, friends, neighbors, employers, acquaintances, street people, and anyone else the perpetrators can get to cooperate, which are many, have been used against me in these operations. And you're absolutely right about that. Let's see. Gaslighting. A standard PSYOP tactic where items in someone's residence or vehicle are moved around or stolen and then maybe put back at a later date while the target is away. This does considerable psychological damage to the target and creates paranoia. For a time, where'd it go? For a time, I had no safe place to put anything. I would keep my wallet, keys, phone, pocket knife on me at all times. And as previously mentioned, I'm sensitized again, Pavlovian, to many stimuli like numbers, letters, sounds, colors, objects, and more. Another tactic done by my perpetrators was unalived animals, squirrels, birds, other animals. Roadkill? Placed on the path walk to my vehicle, or left on the windshield, or right outside the driver's front door. This happened many times. Let's see, I'm on page 6. Obviously, I was under attack. I knew that. But I knew nothing else. Who? Why? What was going on? I filed at least 15 police reports in Connecticut, and at first, I had an inaccurate and false police report written up by the local Fairfield Police Department. But when I picked up the report, read it, and confronted the police, they changed it. After that, most of the reports I filed were fairly accurate. Well, that was fortunate. Mine aren't. I filed 3 reports of mail tampering with the Postmaster General, Federal in Connecticut. I visited the FBI office in Bridgeport, Connecticut twice. I spoke with the same agent both times and sent them information regarding the targeting. The FBI agent was polite and treated me well, but was not honest with me as he knew what was going on, but said nothing. The agent was finishing my sentences for me. Obviously, he knew what was going on. I also do not come from a military, police, or crime family, so I had nothing in my life to prepare me for what I was experiencing and forced to deal with. I cannot put into words the impact of having to deal with this on a constant 24/7 basis. It's beyond words, but I am trying to convey as best as I can my experience in this small document. I have experienced unimaginable stress. All targets do. My health was and is severely negatively affected, damaged by the targeting. Every area of my life was and is negatively impacted. In Connecticut, I left a job that I had because of the targeting. I didn't know what was going on. The targeting has cost me and my family money, damaged my health, and almost killed me. I left the country for a while because of the targeting. The targeting interfered with and contaminated my relationships with family members, including my relationships with parents before their passing. My mother's life was negatively impacted in the last years of her life. The targeting interfered with and contaminated my relationships with friends. The targeting interfered with and contaminated my relationships with everyone. My father was coerced. Also, in 9 other states. In 2003, I tried leaving Connecticut. I did not know for how long. thinking I might be able to get away from the targeting. I left for Colorado, driving a place I had previously lived, but the targeting followed me. I turned around in Illinois, and when it became clear to me that I was not going to escape the targeting and drove back to Connecticut, I was crushed and depressed. I then knew my targeting was not local, but on a larger scale. I survived this horrific treatment and attacks as best I could while maintaining my commitments and responsibilities to my parents for almost 4 years alone, with little help and no help from anyone. There were days, 25 to 50 incidents might happen in a single day. Sometimes more, some minor or some small, but still had that many incidents. I was under heavy attack. I was in a near constant state of sleeplessness, anxiety, fear, anger, rage, and depression. My health was failing. When I got the chance, I would drive 30 minutes, 15, 20 miles north, and go into the woods and get some peace and relief. Not everybody wants to live here. Not everybody wants to live around here. One spot I frequented was Huntington State Park in Reading, Bethel, Newton, Connecticut. Sometimes even that did not work, as the perpetrators would mark, quote unquote, some of the spots I would frequent. I was constantly trying to figure out what was going on and looking for answers and relief. In February 2005, my father had a serious car accident and was not able to return home. That's when I had to legally take over my parents' estate and become power of attorney for virtually everything, including health care for my parents. I had to do this while living in an electronic concentration camp, being under constant attack. It became my responsibility to manage my father's medical affairs, take care of my mother, as well as manage their estate. Doing business, taking over the family estate, power of attorney for health care, caretaking, etc. It was very difficult because, 1, I had no safe place to put anything like paperwork, etc. Number 2, everything I tried to do was interfered with. Things were stolen out of the residence, messages sent and not received, faxes sent and not received, wrong dates on documents, mail tampering, messages not returned, etc., much, much more. The perpetrators had tried to interfere with everything I did. I tried everything I could think of and afford to secure the residence and family vehicles. I had partial success with some methods, including chains, deadbolts, combination padlocks, and other simple, crude methods, but I did not have a lot of money to work with, so I was limited in what I could do. I was also overwhelmed by the targeting, taking over my family estate, and also caretaking. Finally, also in 2005, while on the internet, I somehow found some websites on covert war, organized stalking, gang-stalking, cause-stalking. There were other terms as well. I had an aha moment and was finally able to put a word, a face on what I was experiencing. I continued to search, and I found other websites about what was happening. I have continued to research to this day, 14 years later, and he's still doing it now. Then he goes, I am a targeted individual. Almost all these crimes committed against the targeted me happen behind the targeted victim's back. When they're not there, from a distance, in the most cowardly way possible. The target has no chance or opportunity to confront their attackers face to face. No opportunity to defend themselves, and it's all by design, of course. The target can be harassed, abused, assaulted, and even unalived, and the target has no recourse. If the target complains to the proper authorities, they are likely taken for a psych evaluation and labeled mentally ill, which makes the situation that much worse for the targeted victim. Yeah, this is it's called discredit. They want to discredit the truth, right? So So what happens is you file a complaint with the same people that are perpetrating the crimes against you. So we all know how that goes. Of course, that's the point. It's an almost perfect trap, all done by design, intentionally. The mental health community cooperates with these torture programs and operations. All the tactics are deceit-based and covert. The perpetrators are masters of deceit. Eventually, I came into contact with other targets and got involved in activism. I was not dealing with the attacks alone anymore, and I had a name or label for what was happening. Organized gang stalking, Cointelpro operations, directed energy weapon assaults, dues. It was happening to many other people as well, targeted individuals. I have worked with and been in contact with many other targets. Some helped me, some have been able to help, though the targeted community is very difficult to deal with. Well, ain't that the truth? I sent emails and letters to Congress, persons, senators, journalists, newspapers, and other media, and more when I was doing activism. 2 projects I was involved in were the Silent Holocaust Day and Reinvestigation of Cointelpro. House Resolution number 1026, proposed by then Congresswoman Cynthia McKinney. Oh, I know who Cynthia is. Other activism. Let's see. I have a publicly posted story on the internet that I wrote up 11 years ago in Connecticut. It can be accessed by anyone. Simply enter Robert Wood organized gang-stalking / Cointelpro into any search engine, and the story I wrote 11 years ago will come up, and I'll just show you what that looks like. Okay, 1 second. Okay. It took me a while to learn and figure out that these are government-sponsored programs and operations. There are many names for these government-sponsored torture operation programs, such as Cointelpro, gang-stalking, organized stalking, cause stalking, multi-stalking, counterintelligence stalking, contract stalking, and more. There is much information regarding these programs, such as Cointelpro and others, readily available for anyone willing to do the research. The information at this time and date is plentiful regarding these horrific government torture program operations to abuse, torture, control, neutralize, and destroy innocent private citizens. Many of the psychological methods, tactics, psyops used on targeted individuals come straight out of the U.S. government's CIA, MK Ultra, mind control projects, of which were at least 150 subsets. These programs and projects have never stopped, even after exposure. And they have progressed and are more widespread today than ever before, though under different names, quote unquote. He goes on to say, I'm an enemy of the state. This is happening all across the United States and globally. I'm not alone. The operation programs are covert, so the government has deniability. And just for the record, I spoke to somebody this week, and I asked the question, how many people do you feel are being targeted, watch listed, or whatever? And, I threw out, 4 to 8 million people, and he blew me away and said, no, it's hundreds of millions of people. Hundreds, thousands of millions of people. The operations programs are covert, so the government has deniability. It's my experience and the experience of other targets as well that the police, fire department, EMT are all part of these operations and programs. It is treasonous for them to be doing so, and they are betraying their public trust. Number 72. For the government, U.S. government, to be running covert operations on private citizens in the United States of America is, as mentioned, treasonous, criminal, and illegal. Not to mention fascist and Nazis. The USA is a Stasi state now. There are different levels and modes of the targeting. It is not the exact same for all targets. One common strategy I have personally experienced and seen done to other targets is the perpetrators / government does a profile on the target before the operation starts. They then tailor the operation program to the target. In essence, many targets, including myself, are tortured with their own psychological profile. These programs' operations are advanced technology based. The electromagnetic spectrum has been weaponized by the powers that be, and they have capabilities that range from surveillance to mind control to torture to outright unaliving. All invisible to the naked eye, which again gives the perpetrators, the government, deniability. Well, I'm just going to add something here. Well, they can say that it's, deniability. They can deny it all they want. But these weapons do exist, and they are, unfortunately, out in the general public. There are no laws against them, for the most part. These are acts of war. There's a plethora of information regarding the tactics and technology used on targets. The information is not disputable. All the patents for the technology exist and are not in question. In one Google's targeted individual in the U.S. will get about 200 million results at the present time. That was in May of 2019. There are many targets in the U.S. and abroad, and some of the technology includes, but it's not limited to, surveillance, DEWs, directed energy weapons, voice-to-skull, V2K, or microwave hearing, or the 5 patented technologies, remote neural monitoring, RNM, EEG cloning, ELF, which is extremely low frequencies, equals 3-30 hertz electromagnetic spectrum, implants, bugs, micro, nanochipping, sensors, AI intelligence, supercomputers, and much more. The entire USA and much of the world is networked, so targets cannot get away. As the U.S. is networked, many Americans knowingly and unknowingly participate in these torture operation programs against their fellow citizens and countrymen. I believe many different methods are used to coerce people to participate in the operations in the program. They're told lies about the target. They have a reward system, intimidation, fear, social bonding, community neighborhood watch group programs. They lie. Infraguard, which is the FBI program, and the USA is a bona fide Stasi state at this time, and that was, back in 2019. The USA is a bona fide Stasi state at this time. Most people will do what an authority figure tells them to do. That's the Milgram experiment in 1961 and 74. I have been organized, gang-stalked, targeted in Christian churches and various spiritual groups. I have experienced almost constant PSYOPs, psychological warfare operations, tactics, and Cointelpro for almost 18.5 years. As mentioned above, much of the psychological knife-wielding comes out of the U.S. government MK-Ultra mind control program. They are used in combination with one psychological profile, as mentioned, to psychologically torture, destroy the target, and or force a suicide. The cover, quote unquote, for the targeting is mental illness, and the government tries to funnel targets into the mental health system. Political psychiatry, this is nothing new. The mental health system cooperates with these operations for profit. He says, I have had a psychological evaluation done, and the results were positive, not delusional, clean bill of health. Many targets in these programs have had their lives ruined, are fighting for their lives, or being unalived. What am I looking at here? One second. Again, one of the goals of these horrific programs is to force a suicide. 3 target victims that I personally work with and was close to are not alive anymore. 2 of them were doctors. They were not criminals or terrorists. And they were murdered by these horrific covert government torture programs. In the land of the free. Oops, I just skipped too far. One second. Sorry about that, folks. I'm using my cursor here and it just skipped forward. Looking back, I can see, as mentioned above, that the perpetrators of my operation, the United States government, got my father and other family members to cooperate in the operation against his own son in his old age. This is not unusual in these operations and programs. As a matter of fact, it is common. This is psychologically devastating to the targeted victim. Eventually, I was able to secure the family residence with the help of a security expert, John Gordon from Gordon Security in Huntington, Connecticut, and money which I attained through a reverse mortgage done to keep my elderly mother out of an institution. But we were still under 24/7 surveillance. That's horrible. My father died in October 2007. Also in 2007, I believe I participated in a lawsuit with another target by the name of Elizabeth Adams. I sent her information, but I don't know what happened to the case, and I was unable to follow up on it, as there was too much happening for me at the time. Let's see, let's scroll down here. My mother passed in April of 2011. I stayed in Connecticut through March 2012 for a probate court case. I left Connecticut and the country in March of 2012. My targeting continued while out of the country. I hooked up with other targeted people, a woman that I had known for about 6 years in southern Mexico. Yucatan Peninsula, not far from Belize. Number 101 here. The situation in Mexico was not going to work for many reasons, and I came back to the United States in May of 2012 and hooked up with another target in Duluth, Minnesota. That is how I came to be in Minnesota, where I am now. So he went to live with another targeted person. The situation in Mexico was not going to work for many reasons, and I came back to the United States in 2012 and hooked up with another target in Duluth, Minnesota. I was in bad shape all the way around when I landed in Minnesota. I needed medical attention, which I received in Minnesota. Let's see. I have had some blessings in Minnesota. One of them being that my GP doctor knew about the targeting, and I was able to be honest with her, and this was a big help. One of the difficulties of being targeted is most people don't believe you when you try to tell them what's happening. They think you're either mentally ill or fabricating it. This adds to the psychological torture of being targeted. All of the master plan, of course, and mental illness is the cover for the program, the cops. And I just need to add something here, just to validate this point. I'm going to just reference that eBay stalker case. You know, the two retired coppers that went to work in the eBay security department. They started to gang stalk, quote unquote, a couple in Massachusetts, sending them unalived animals, harassing them, tormenting them. And this couple, they were very fortunate to get a newspaper involved and an attorney. And you're not going to believe this, an FBI agent testified on their behalf. Yes, I'm just going to fast forward that the judge said that the details in this case were so bizarre that, I think it was a female, she did not even think they would exist in a movie or in a film or something to that effect. So the details are so bizarre. It's intentionally designed to be off the charts bizarre so that people will look at you like, you're nuts, right? Like somebody didn't do that, right? Like, how are you seeing, like, did that really happen? It's designed to be that way. That's why you need to photograph and videotape everything that happens, because you will start to see a pattern evolve. And then when you're sharing it online, other people have the same patterns that are evolving. And no, it's not a delusion. It's a psychological operation played against you and millions, hundreds of millions of other people. A few of the symptoms he was experiencing from the targeting when he arrived in Minnesota 7 years ago were blood pressure as high as 230/20, diabetes, no one in my family has ever had diabetes, heart issues, homelessness, anxiety, fear, anger, rage, depression, and more. And I am recovering from post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. Now, I was also able to go into federal court and win a court case to get on disability for my back and other issues, despite interference and sabotage attempts by my attackers. This was a huge factor in my survival and another one of my blessings here in Minnesota. My health has improved quite a lot over time, and I try to work hard on taking care of myself and healing. I do not smoke, drink, or take illegal substances or drugs. I exercise, meditate, and pray. Needless to say, I do not trust the mental health system or the police or the government in the United States. I have major trust issues generally because the targeting anyone would. I feel like I have been betrayed by my family, friends, society, and the country. I managed to find employment and worked at a large medical facility in Duluth, which was Essentia Health, for almost 2.5 years. The targeting continued while I worked there, and many employees and coworkers cooperated with the operation program against me. That assignment ended May 17, 2019, and I was asked to leave for mentioning the targeting to a coworker. Oh, probably the coworker was part of the program, was maybe unaware of it, and you tipped them off or something. So unfortunately, that's what happened. It's acceptable for me to be organized, gang stalked, and targeted and tortured at work, but I'm not allowed to say anything about it. It's a rigged game system. It also horrifies me that people in a hospital setting would be involved in organized gang-stalking Cointelpro torture operation programs against their fellow employees and coworkers. That personally scares me to death. These are supposed to be caring, quote-unquote, people that one can trust with their life. I find this absolutely horrifying. I have filed 30 incident reports with the Duluth Police Department since I've been in Minnesota 7 years. I have filed 2 reports with the Postmaster General here in Minnesota, which makes my total to 5, and then you add the 3 that I filed in Connecticut. My mailbox was broken into twice here in Minnesota, which is a federal crime. Well, that sounds familiar, huh? My apartment has been invaded many times here in Minnesota. I have hooked up with a locksmith that I trust here in Duluth and have installed lock boxes with expensive locks so I have a secure place to put things in my apartment, at least for the moment. I have a new security system in my apartment, and there have been no signs of home invasions in well over a year. I am tagged and marked wherever I go. There have been well over 100 books written about the targeting. Well, this is a long time ago. There's a lot more now. As I stated above, there is so much information about the targeting readily available to anyone willing to look for it, and there are many other targets. On the Targeted Justice website, he writes, a group of which he was a member. There's much information from credible sources, doctors, scientists, researchers, authors, academics, journalists, high-profile whistleblowers from intelligence agencies, military, government, and more. There are many other sources for the facts and information I'm stating in this document. The facts I am presenting in this document are true and indisputable. I challenge anyone to research this information for themselves. And I consider it a near miracle that I have survived 18 and a half years of targeting, and I'm doing as well as I can. I no longer wish to drive or own a motor vehicle due to the targeting because, one, the perpetrators use the vehicle as a tool for harassment, which would cost me money, tampering, vandalism, sabotage, and two, I'm afraid to drive because of the risks involved in the street theater and the accidents. He says, I will not ride a motorcycle or a bicycle because of the exposure risk. I believe someone would bump into me, as has happened many times before. I have been the target and an enemy of a criminal, fascist, Nazi, military, Stasi, police state for over 18 and a half years in the United States of America, the land of the free. This affidavit is not complete, as it's not possible for me to include everything that has happened to me over the past 18.5 years plus of being a targeted individual in this one small affidavit document. I have done the best I could to describe in a synoptic way my horrific experiences as a targeted individual in the United States of America. The United States government needs to own up, quote unquote, and take full responsibility for these horrific criminal torture program operations publicly admit they're taking place, apologize to the targets, and compensate them for their suffering. And that would be a nice beginning. It would be a start. It has made me so physically sick to go back over these events and state them in this affidavit. I just want to add here, at the end of this affidavit document, that if anything tragic or suspicious should happen to me, I would hope that there will be questions asked and a full investigation done. And I apologize for any redundancy in this affidavit, but certain things I don't mind mentioning more than once. I declare under penalty of perjury, under the laws of the United States and the state of Minnesota, so the facts and information herein are true, correct, and accurate. This was executed the 29th day of May 2019. Robert Earle Wood, Duluth, Minnesota. And by the way, I spoke with Robert today for quite a long time with regard to Jessica, who's being held against her will in Alabama hospital by two psychopaths that put her there. So anyway, I hope you learned something from this very detailed testimony. He also had this notarized. Okay, I want you to see this. This is a public record. Okay, I want you to see how professional he did this. So this document will hold up in a court of law. Okay, there you go. That's how you do it. That's how we should all do it. I commend him. I haven't done it yet. But anyway, please leave your comments down below. I got through all 19 pages, and thank you so much, Robert, for giving me the permission to read this for you. I will send you the link so that, well, maybe you don't want to listen to it because it is re-traumatizing. It really is. And again, this is from 2019. We're in 2025, and nothing has changed. It's continued, and now we're both dealing with the whole Jessica situation. Jessica is a PhD, sweet as can be, super smart chemist who's being targeted and held against her will for 7 months. Not 7 days, not 7 weeks, 7 months in an Alabama mental place. And they are injecting her with a pharmaceutical drug that I learned today is extremely damaging. In fact, there have been class action lawsuits that were won by the victims against this particular drug. And they're giving it to her. So anyway, reading these testimonies, is very triggering. I appreciate anybody that listens, especially the new people. If you're newly targeted, you need to be listening to testimonies because this stuff is really happening. People don't make this stuff up. Okay? When people are suffering, sometimes they will do anything. They'll write it down to relieve their suffering and help other people. And that is exactly what Robert Wood has done here for you guys. So I'm going to sign off for now. Please remember to hit the thumbs up. Please share this video.